Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant, and we welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers and hope you're enjoying your weekend. Later, Amber Philpott will join us with some of her interview with Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman on a recent and very personal decision. That's coming up later. But if you ask any Kentuckian where they're from, most will name a county. We have 120 counties. That puts us in the top. Only some other states like Texas and Georgia have more. And our counties face unique challenges. That's the case whether they're dealing with pressure for urban-like services and the larger ones or the smaller ones that sometimes have challenges just paying the bills and meeting state requirements. Joining us today from the Kentucky Association of Counties is the Executive Director and CEO Jim Henderson, who, by the way, is a former judge executive himself, so you know this game well.
Just a little bit. Thanks, Bill.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
First to this unique sense of place that Kentuckians have, because it is true that it's something that binds us and distinguishes us, because it is often a point of pride. If you ask somebody where they're from, they're going to tell you the county.
That's true, and I think not as much now. I think they've changed the license plates where you can not put your county name on there, but we were one of the few states that actually had the county name on your license plate. I think that kind of speaks to the Kentucky culture that people identify by their county name. A lot of our schools, obviously, those things that we identify with are county-centric. So yeah, you're exactly right.
We have 120 of them. Is it blasphemous within your organization to talk about at some point doing some mergers and having fewer counties?
It's really not. In fact, some of our county officials talk about it. It's hard to think about how we would ever get there because, conceptually, I think even county judges and fiscal courts that would talk to each other as neighbors sometimes talk about that economies of scale, but it's a big lift. There haven't been a lot of mergers of counties or cities and counties in our nation's history. So it's a heavy lift, but I think people understand that there are some valid arguments for that. Even among the county ranks, people talk about it.
Is there a number that often seems right to people? That there should be maybe 50 counties or something?
It's all across the state. It's very different. I think when you've seen one county, that's kind of our NACO, National Association of Counties, talks about that. There are large states, particularly out west, that have very few numbers of counties. It depends on really what people have gotten used to. It's not uncommon to live in a state where your county may be 50 miles across. In Kentucky, there aren't that many counties that are that large, like Georgia. Georgia's a very heavy populous countied state for a state that's not much bigger than us in geography. So yeah. It's hard to know what that number would be, that magic number. I'm not sure there is such a thing.
The history in Kentucky was to make it to within a day's horseback ride to the courthouse, right?
To the county seat, yeah. And you can do that in about every county now.
Another area that we're 50 years into the judicial changes in 1974, and yet we still call what in other states would be called a county executive or a county mayor a judge.
Yes.
And that confuses a lot of people. I've talked to young folks who say, that you understand the judge does not have judicial power, and they don't oftentimes.
No, it was when I was judge, it was very confusing when we were dealing with economic development projects, people that came in not only from other states but from other countries that were looking at locating an industry, and they would be puzzled as why is a judge sitting at the table talking to us about that. It's just it has a rich history in our state. I was actually in D.C. recently with other state association executives and presidents, and I was with our Tennessee counterpart, and they call it a county mayor, and that was a fairly recent change. They used to actually use that term county judge, and they changed it because of the confusion that sometimes occurred when they were dealing with people from out of the state about the role. So, we do a pretty good job of explaining why it's still called county judge and explaining it's more like an county executive position. But there are some other states that actually still call the chief executive position a county judge. Arkansas, Texas, Florida is not as much as it used to be. So it's not completely unusual to have that term in other states, but we're pretty unique in it.
But there's not been a lot of talk of changing it.
No, not in a long time.
Okay, let's get to some tougher questions now. The mantra, especially among conservatives, used to be that the best decisions are made at the local level. In recent years, Frankfort has been much more likely, though, to write rules and put those down to the local governments and place mandates on them, often without sending the money to help to make it happen. Do you have concerns about the balance between local and state government?
I do, and our members do, and I personally identify as a political conservative, and always have believed that the best decisions are made at the local level, that the best government is the government closest to the people, and that's us at the county level. And it is concerning to see so much, and this is a national trend. It's something we talk about when we gather with other counterparts from across the country in county government, that these preemption bills, that's kind of the term that's used in the legislative vernacular, where people reach down and try to tell local government what they can and can't do. It is something that is troubling, and we talk about it a lot among our membership.
I mean, would you call it a power struggle between Frankfort and the local governments?
Well, counties are a political subdivision of the state, so we're much more naturally connected to state government. I think for us, the partnership between counties and the state is so important that obviously we don't necessarily want to view it that way. We just want to understand how do we match that up, because we're heavily dependent upon the state budget. A lot of the county responsibilities are constitutionally and statutorily prescribed by the state, and so we do a lot of things that are an extension of state government. So, but still, I think we prefer to have a lot more decision making at the county level on the issues that are important to the local folks.
Why would lawmakers think that the decision is best made in Frankfort when it may be a matter that can be decided at the local level?
That's a great question. I think it might differ from legislator to legislator. I mean, sometimes you have, I'm sure, experiences where you've seen, as a legislator, you may personally disagree with a decision that your county judge and fiscal court or your mayor or city council made, and you hear that feedback. It's the same constituency, the same folks who vote for the mayor also are having a vote for the county judge, and they're also getting to vote for their state representative and their state senator. And sometimes the electorate doesn't really know the difference between who is ultimately responsible. I know legislators tell me they get questions about things from the citizens that are really federal issues, right? And they think, well, you're a senator, so that's your, sometimes people don't understand, and they think the same of the county judge or the fiscal court, that you're deciding about issues that are of state matters. So it's a constant education on the part of those of us in government about how it all works, even with the electorate.
What would you say is the highest priority for counties right now in this current legislative session that is underway? There are lots of discussions about a lot of bills. The most important bill, of course, is the state budget that will be enacted, the spending plan for the next 2 years. There are some matching funds for counties as a part of that process. What are the high priorities for you?
Well, the budget is absolutely the highest priority for us because, as I said, we're so dependent upon that interrelationship with state government. So it's just full of different pieces that affect everything we do at the county level. Obviously, it's a perennial issue for us, but county jails continue to be a real issue. Just trying to figure out how to fund that responsibility at the local level when it's, there's so much that's outside of our control, but we're responsible for operating the county jail, and many counties also house state inmates, so it's a very interrelated issue for us. Annexation's been an issue for us. We raised that issue last session. It's not a new issue, but it got some attention last issue. We continue to talk about that in this session and looking for maybe some resolution on that. So some big topics there.
Let me ask you about that.
Sure.
There's been some friction in recent years as cities grow or want to grow and expand their boundaries, and the impact can be on counties in terms of the revenue, the revenue share situation. So I take it that is the main grievance when it comes to cities wanting to annex into counties, right?
It really is. I mean, in most of our counties, the county judge and the mayor and the city council and the fiscal court are great partners and are working together on many issues. Unfortunately, the laws that exist that are applied primarily in about 30 counties, the way that the population thresholds are established, just creates natural tension, because when a city grows and expands its boundaries, it costs the county not only revenue they now collect, but the potential for future revenue, and it's mostly in the growth counties, so there's a lot at stake, and so it creates tension. County governments, our county officials are not against their cities growing. When cities are growing, the counties are growing too. We just want it to benefit both the county and city government as that happens.
How much pressure is there on counties to provide urban-like services? You know, they will see in the city that folks can get a very quick response from a police department or a fire department. They will see the utilities that are available to them. They'll see regulations that are put in place that make some rules in their neighborhoods.
Right.
How much ongoing pressure is there for the counties to do more of those things?
It's real, and I think most county officials want to be able to respond to that when people in the more rural areas ask for things that are much more like an urban service. You know, we're such a different creature, though, from a city government. As I said, we have so many statutory responsibilities that are unique and county-wide that most counties really, especially if you get into a smaller county, really can't offer as much of those things as they might even want to rural residents. And so, again, that makes sense for people to want to be closer to the city if they want those services. We're not opposed to that, right? We just want to make sure that the revenue's not lost when that happens.
But they'll go out and build a very expensive home 5 miles out of the city limits, and then sometimes not understand when the response to a fire on their property or whatever is not what it would be in a city.
Exactly, and I faced that when I was county judge. And you know, as a state, we're seeing incredible growth in our population, particularly along the more growth areas along the interstate corridors. And so we're seeing not just growth from within the state, but a lot of people coming into our state from out of state, and they're escaping a lot of things that they don't like in other states to come to a more rural state where it's maybe a little more relaxed and maybe less like they knew, but yet they do want some of those things that we don't often have outside of the urban corridor. So it is a struggle.
And 6 out of 10 Kentuckians live in a city, but everybody lives in a county, right? So how challenging is it for county officials to appeal to residents in the city, again, who may see that they get their services from their city governments, and so it doesn't matter maybe as much to them what is going on outside the city limits?
Well, it's an ongoing struggle that we have to tell the county story. I think very few people, including myself, before you get into the county government, truly understand what our roles and responsibilities are. Elections, for example, those are things we take for granted that we're going to be able to participate in, but those are for everyone, right? And so the responsibility of providing a safe and secure election process rests with the county clerk. That's for everybody. The fact that we want to have a place where people can be locked up when they do something wrong, that's a benefit to all the citizens of the county. The sheriff providing security to the judicial judges and in the court system and serving papers and all the work that goes on in the civil service, those are benefits that benefit everybody. But I don't think the citizens readily are able to see those things necessarily as a function of county government that they know. So we have to keep telling the county story so that people do understand that, because it's an area that unless you need something that county government provides, or that you don't even know that it's them that's providing it, you may not even recognize that is what you're getting when you're paying for county services.
Very often libraries, more and more county parks being developed. We're seeing that kind of thing.
Public health, cooperative extension, all of those are outreaches of county government.
The drug problem has been such a challenge for Kentucky, and counties have had to wrestle with it on several levels, with law enforcement, with the coroner's offices, frankly, having to deal with these overdoses. Will some of the settlement money that is being parceled out to local governments be helpful in that regard?
Yes, and the opioid settlement funds are going to be very important to local governments. It's being dispersed to both cities and counties through a federal court order. These are not taxpayer dollars. These are court-ordered funds from these pharmaceutical companies, these manufacturers and distributors that were part of the problem that created this scourge of the opioid problem. So we actually brought somebody on board at KCO who's going to be working directly with counties, working in partnership with our National Association of Counties, and that's their full-time job, is to really assist counties on best practices. What can you do to make these dollars go as far as they possibly can, to not only help those who are now caught up in this system, but to help avoid that becoming a problem in the future. So it's a long window, about 15 to 18 years, about 15 years left of about an 18-year window of those funds. So counties have got to be very thoughtful about And it's not a lot of money in any one year. So you look at the long game. How can we best use those resources? I think some of our counties are going to look at regional things, doing things with their neighboring counties, because that's going to be the best way to do it. These funds are distributed in a different way than we're used to. They're not based on population or county size. They're based on where the data has shown the problem was. So some of our smaller counties are getting some of the largest amounts of money. Some of the large counties aren't getting as much because it's been a real scourge in rural Kentucky, particularly in the east.
Well, and some were incentivized to come up with programs, and those are what got the awards in some cases.
In some cases.
Workforce is such an issue in the state. What do your local officials tell you about how that impacts them, both in trying to maybe locate businesses within their counties or their own workforces?
It's a double-edged sword, as you just described. Not only are they struggling to find the workforce to fill the job needs in their county that private business and industry has, but with this wageflation that we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years, which is great for workers. I mean, if the wage that's being paid is going up, that's good. The pressure on county government, though, is tremendous because, again, very limited resources in some of our counties, and so to compete just with a person who can go to work at a fast food restaurant or an entry-level position is sometimes more than they could pay to hire somebody to work as a deputy jailer or a deputy sheriff. So it's a real struggle for our counties to keep up with, again, not the ability to go straight to the market price for wages that the private sector can raise the price of goods, right? They can charge more to pay for that. We can't do that.
Animal control is a major issue for counties, right? And I know the rules have been for a long time that the county's responsible, and yet, again, there's not a lot of funding for that comes at least down from the state.
Exactly, and I'll tell you, it might be surprising, but anybody who served as county judge or a fiscal court member will know it is one of the most often calls you would get as a county official in most of our counties. And people are very, very bothered by situations that involve stray animals, stray dogs, the barking dogs. I mean, it can become, and vicious dogs. I mean, it becomes a real issue in a lot of our counties. And we are tasked in almost every county with that responsibility. Very little funding associated with it. And sadly, a county judge could spend almost a full-time job just taking those calls in some of our counties.
A few seconds left. What would you have people know about their counties, their abilities to serve them, and their goals, and how they can get more involved if they would like?
Well, I appreciate that question. What I found, and not only when I served, but now in this role, is that most county officials elected across this state are people who got into this line of work because they love their community, they believe in public service, and they put a lot on the line and sacrifice a lot to serve the people in their county. And that's rewarding for me to work for people like that. I do wish people would be more involved. I wish people would attend fiscal court meetings and get involved and understand what's happening. I think most of our county officials want an engaged and educated electorate that appreciates what they do at the county level. So we all have a responsibility to be more civically engaged, and it's certainly no different for the county.
All right. Jim Henderson is the Executive Director and CEO at KCO. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Bill.
We really do appreciate it. We're coming right back in just a moment. We'll hear more of Amber Philpott's interview with Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman. WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers is coming back. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers. Kentucky Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman recently made the very personal decision to undergo a preventative double mastectomy. It came after her doctors made a discovery at the height of the fall campaign when she and Governor Andy Beshear were running hard for re-election. This week, the Lieutenant Governor talked with our own Amber Philpott about her situation and her decision. And Amber is joining us right now. This was very personal for the Lieutenant Governor, obviously, but even more difficult, wasn't it, given that it happened at the, in the spotlight of a campaign?
I can't imagine. We know how busy they were in the fall campaigning. So she goes in, she has her first mammogram in September. They say they see something, they want to bring you back. And then she said really over September, October, and November, she had more questions than she had answers, but still in the gravity of all of that, of a bus tour crisscrossing the state, all of the campaign stops. And, I asked the Lieutenant Governor, how did you manage it all? And I think think she said, it really was a nice distraction, a welcome distraction. And she really credits the governor who stepped up and said, your health is more important. Go take care of yourself. If you have to miss something, you have to miss something. And she said she really credited because she knows that not all women get that.
We want to show your story and the interview with the Lieutenant Governor. We'll discuss that a bit after that.
In the fall of 2023, Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman had a lot on her plate. She was actively crisscrossing the state campaigning for another re-election bid with Governor Andy Beshear, which ended in a win. Then came inauguration, where she gave a rousing speech.
As I look around, I'm reminded that what unites us is far greater than what divides us.
But under the surface, she was dealing with something very personal.
I have a history in my family of breast cancer, and so it was a little, it was just kind of looming. It was one of those things that I thought, I'm just kind of waiting to hear.
In September, the 41-year-old went for her first mammogram.
Some issues were raised, which set the ball rolling for more intense and invasive screenings.
Doctors found 4 lesions, meaning she would need 4 biopsies. 3 were benign, but doctors say the 4th had the potential of becoming malignant. It was emotional and heartbreaking news for Coleman.
So I was alone that day because you go to the doctor by yourself, right? And so that was hard, but I have to say that the nurses and the doctors who do this all day, every day, right? This could very well become like, an assembly line for them. They were so compassionate and they were so empathetic.
The wife and mom decided in that moment to be proactive, opting against the 4 surgeries and wondering if cancer would ever be diagnosed, and instead chose a double mastectomy.
I knew that I wanted to have a double mastectomy because I needed that relief. I needed to not have to worry about this looming. I was going to have to do scans and screenings every 6 months for the rest of my life. And I just didn't want to live like that.
The Lieutenant Governor says from September to November, she had more questions than answers. The election, she admits, was a welcome distraction.
I was able to, talk to the governor about it and kind of give him a heads up that I don't know what this is going to mean. And I have to give credit to him because he said, this bus tour, our political events, none of that is more important than your health. And you need to take care of that. And if you have to miss something, I've got it.
Now, back at work, the Lieutenant Governor has received countless cards and well wishes, and she's heard the stories of other Kentucky women, and it's why she chose to share her own journey.
That was a lonely feeling in that office when I got the news that something was wrong enough that surgery was required, but I didn't quite know what it meant. And I don't want other women to feel that way.
Her story is deeply personal, but Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman hopes her experience encourages other women to get their screenings. We saw the tears in her eyes when asked if she had thought about what if she had put hers off.
But there could have been real consequences if I had put this off. And, you get this news, you go home, and your, three-year-old comes home from preschool. And you think, man, she needs me.
Very personal is right. Does she believe that sharing her stories is one of the best ways that she can help other women?
100%. She has a great platform, right? And I asked her, does this make her want to now advocate and do other things in her role? And she said certainly she will always advocate for women getting the best care, also advocating for their own care, and then also talking about how lonely it can be for some people, that they feel like they're the only one going through this. And she said, I didn't know anybody who had gone through this, so if I could share my story and someone else connects. And Bill, in fact, after the story aired, I got an email from a woman who had gone through this and was thankful and actually said, how could I share my story to the Lieutenant Governor so I can tell people they're not alone?
Every indication she's doing okay.
Going to have one more surgery, and she's back at work looking forward to 4 years and whatever comes their way on the business they've started that she says they want to finish.
I told you could blame me for one question about her political future, and you did ask that, and she would really only sort of hint evident that she wants to remain in the public arena?
You can tell she still wants to serve whatever that capacity is going to be. There was a bit of a giggle in there that I gave her a hard time about, but I think certainly she's got a future ahead if she wants it. And I think things like this, seeing a woman in her role is so important for other Kentucky women, especially when it comes to what she does, but also when it comes to health care for sure.
It was a great interview and a great story, and we appreciate you. And it's on WKYT.com if folks want to see it. Stay with us. We'll be back with a look at what we have scheduled for next week's Kentucky Newsmakers in a moment. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers, and before we go, a word about next week. Among our scheduled guests next week, Lexington Mayor Linda Gorton. She'll be delivering her State of the City address, giving an idea of how things are going in Lexington and Fayette County. And then longtime Lexington lawmaker Ruth Ann Palumbo, who is stepping down after more than a third of a century in the State House, will also be a guest. That is Kentucky Newsmakers for this week. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you make it a good week ahead.